Hello everyone, this is Dave. Happy Monday. Thank you for watching as always. Hope you had a good weekend. Today I'm going to take you through my top secret, highly confidential Rocket Lab short-term trades that I've been doing recently and really just go over my entire thesis for this and what I'm looking for, the return I'm looking to get, what's been happening so far. To be honest with you, I was a little unsure if I should share this information because I certainly don't want to encourage irresponsible behavior, and short-term trading can often be incredibly risky and inadvisable. So I do want to put out the proviso that I am like 99% long-term investor, 1% short-term trader, and I do that 1% because, well, frankly, it's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing the research. I seem to do okay on it. And I maintain the long-term investments as the vast majority of my portfolio because these things can go very wrong so easily and lose your entire investment. That's why I kind of consider it the cherry on top and not the entire meal, if you will. All that being said, if you're new here, please do consider subscribing if you haven't already. And if you're not new here, thank you so much for your support. Special thanks, of course, to the channel members, as always, for keeping this channel going. With that out of the way, let's dive into my Rocket Lab trade. Okay, so high level, what are we doing here? Well, the entire idea behind the trade is that I think I have a pretty good idea of when a massive contract is coming for Rocket Lab, and I expect it to have a significant move on the stock price. And when you think you know the date a move is going to happen, you should be able to make a good amount of money off of it. The trade catalyst will be the SDA Tranche 3 Transport Layer Awards. Let's talk about the high-level thesis here. So first of all, I believe Rocket Lab is in a prime position to win a contract from the SDA for a portion of this Tranche 3 constellation, and it will result in a significant move in the stock price higher. For those who aren't as familiar with the SDA, I hope you'll bear with me because if you're a regular viewer of the channel, I know you'll be very familiar. But if you're new here, what is the SDA constellation? It's basically a defense constellation for missile tracking, communication, and stuff like that, satellites in space. Now, it's divided up into different tranches, and you can think of a tranche like a generation. So we've already had generation or tranche 0 and 1 and 2 be awarded and had some launches already. Tranche 3, the awards are coming soon. And that's kind of what we're playing is the Tranche 3 awards. Now, within each of these generations or tranches, they are divided up into various layers. We have a transport layer, which is basically communications between satellites and the ground, of course. And then we have a tracking layer, which is actually tracking missiles and objects. And those satellites are doing a lot of the work and tend to be more expensive and more valuable. So those are kind of the two main layers. There is some other stuff going on, but we're mostly focused on tracking layer and transport layer. So what's the history so far? Tranche 0 was, and I know it's weird they started Tranche 0, I guess that was kind of like a beta or like a test phase. Transport layer had 20 satellites. Lockheed Martin was awarded $187 million for 10 of them. York, $94 million for 10 of them. Why is there like almost double for Lockheed versus York? I'm not too sure about that. It's very weird. I guess York put in a much lower bid for it because they really wanted the deal, or maybe Lockheed was able to command a higher premium because they have that history and heritage on their satellites. But yeah, massive divergence between the cost per satellite here right off the bat, even though they're both transport layer. Anyway, tracking layer was $194 million for just 8 satellites, or 4 for L3 Harris, and 150 for 4 satellites for SpaceX in Tranche 0. Total awards for Tranche 0 was $625 million. What about Tranche 1? Well, the transport layer was $1.8 billion totaled. That's 126 satellites now awarded to Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, and York Space Systems, kind of the big satellite primes that you're probably familiar with if you follow the space industry, and they are the big space satellite defense companies, if you will, for the most part, as well as, of course, L3 Harris, which did get in on the tracking layer. Only 28 satellites, but yeah, a lot more money per satellite. So there was also a demonstration and experimentation system for $200 million for York, and then the total awards were $3.3 billion for Tranche 1. So already going from just $625 million to $3.3 billion. Obviously, a very big jump between tranches. Sorry, having trouble talking there a little bit. Now, Tranche 2, which was fairly recent, and you might remember if you're a Rocket Lab shareholder, because it was very big for Rocket Lab. They were awarded the biggest contract in the history of the company, $515 million for a bunch of transport layer satellites. The total awards for the transport layer this time around was $3.78 billion, another significant jump up. Other award winners, including Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, Tyvak, which was actually bought by Lockheed Martin, so that's also Lockheed now. Very familiar names once again. Going over to the tracking layer awards, that was $2.49 billion, so a bit less, but again, much higher value per satellite. And these awards were given to L3 Harris, Lockheed, and then the big surprise was Sierra Space, which is quite a new company, most well known for their Dream Chaser, but they did manage to get an award to build out these tracking satellite constellation. Now the total awards for Tranche 2, a whopping $6.38 billion, almost double, or I think almost double the $3.3 billion. So we continue to see significant growth between tranches. Now that brings us to the Tranche 3 awards, which are imminent. More on that later. Unfortunately, the transport layer is on pause as the agency and the government are evaluating whether there is a cheaper way of doing this, having suppliers, specifically SpaceX, through a different contract, supply the capability for the transport layer, which is, again, communications. The tracking layer is still on, though, and this is what we're focused on today. There will be 3 awards for 18 satellites each. Now, that does not sound like a lot of satellites, but these are big, hefty, expensive satellites, and when you divide it up per satellite, that's a lot of money for each one. To put it in context, Tranche 2 budget for a similar number of satellites was $2.49 billion. So divided up 3 ways, that's a lot of money to go around, and we've been seeing increases between tranches, so wouldn't surprise me at all if it goes up as well for Tranche 3. Now, Rocket Lab has made it incredibly clear that they are bidding on one of the contracts for the tracking layer. So when we heard transport layer was paused, I was like, oh no, this is bad, because I thought Rocket Lab was going to bid on the transport layer. No, they made it clear they want the tracking layer. I mean, maybe if the transport layer at a later date is reinstated and the government decides to go forward with it, Rocket Lab would bid on that as well. I don't know. But we do know 100% Rocket Lab made a bid on the tracking layer. Continuing on, why do I think Rocket Lab should win one of the 3 spots for the tracking layer Tranche 3? Well, when you look at the requirements and what these companies are being judged on in the solicitation from the SDA, it's all online, publicly available for anyone to look at. One of the things they look at is how well the company has executed in the past and done similar work and stuff like that. The Tranche 2 transport layer is being executed on quite well by Rocket Lab from everything I've heard. Obviously, I don't have insider information there, but from everything I've seen, looking on it, looks like they're proceeding well. They got their design approvals in, and I think they're proceeding to manufacturing and stuff like that. So I think they're doing quite well on that. They have a great history of working with government and delivering on time and on budget. They've also been able to compete very well with these big old school primes, which tend to have a much higher price tag than Rocket Lab. You can remember Rocket Lab's brought so much in-house vertically when you're talking like the solar panels, so many different components they're able to stack in-house and do themselves, and kind of get good margins and offer low prices and fixed price contracts as opposed to cost plus contracts. So there's that. And then of course they made two incredibly strategic acquisitions, which they did have an eye on these awards when they made these acquisitions. First of all, we have Geost, which was already closed. This is already a provider for previous tranches for the tracking payload, like the sensors that go on the satellites in these previous tranches. On the tracking layer to, track missiles and objects in space and stuff like that. So Rocket Lab owning it, being able to guarantee the supply of these trackers and that they'll work and all that kind of stuff should be, I think, a big advantage for Rocket Lab. They're also in progress with their Mynaric acquisition, getting close to closing that one. Mynaric, the optical terminals on the satellites, being used, I believe, both in the transport layer and the tracking layer. And they were actually a bit of a cause of delay for previous tranches because Mynaric was having a tough time spooling up production of these optical laser communication terminals that do basically satellite to satellite and satellite to ground communications. So Rocket Lab, that's another key piece of the satellite payload that they will have in-house and be able to guarantee that they can supply. All these reasons, as well as other intangibles and just the great performance they've done, makes me think they really should win one of these awards. I mean, if Sierra Space won last time around, and they don't have a lot of that stuff in-house, they don't really have as much heritage that I'm aware of anyway, I think Rocket Lab should have a good chance of winning this time around. But it will be competitive. There will, of course, be Lockheeds of the world, L3s of the world, Yorks of the world, all probably applying. So anything could happen. There's always a chance. Rocket Lab could be unsuccessful. Maybe there's some kind of lobbying at play in politics and stuff like that. I don't know. There's no guarantees when it comes to short-term trades. So how much money are we talking about here? It should be at least $750 million. Why do I say that? Well, we looked at the value of Tranche 2 tracking layer and take about 1/3 of it. 1/3 of the value of Tranche 2 was something like $830 million. I do think Rocket Lab could provide a cheap price. So I'm saying, maybe it's $750 because they come in underneath and they don't want to lose out. But yeah, I think they should make at least $750, maybe more if we see another significant step up in spending for this constellation from the SDA. Now, Rocket Lab's entire current backlog is about $1 billion, meaning this single contract would be like a 75% increase in the backlog from one event, one contract, one news release, if you will, which I think could have a big pop on the stock, especially because a lot of people don't look at this stuff as closely as I do, or probably you as well, if you're watching this video and are a shareholder of Rocket Lab. That was one big concern I had when I started doing some short-term trades. It's like, okay, I know this stuff. The information's publicly available. Maybe it's all priced in. But then every time I think maybe something's priced in and there's news that I'm expecting to come out does come out, we do get the resulting pop in stock price. So my conclusion is that a lot of people out there don't follow it as closely as us. Stuff that you think might be priced in generally isn't, and there's always a risk factor. And then the algos just, see the news items and bid up the stock, and things do go up, even when you think a piece of news might be expected in general. Going back into history, the last time Rocket Lab was successful in landing the Tranche 2 transport layer constellation, the stock went from sub 450 to all the way up to about 575. Looks like 571 is what I wrote here, and you can see that on the chart. Now, this was an 8K form filed on Rocket Lab's website. It was a little while later that the SDA kind of put it on their own website and announced the official awards, but Rocket Lab did file that 8K form on the SEC filings of their investor relations webpage at that point. What was the resulting move? It was about 30%, which is pretty significant. Now, of course, a risk factor is that back at the day when Rocket Lab was down at these low levels, and this was about a $515 million contract, their market cap was way lower than it is right now. So is it possible that since their market cap is so much lower that a contract like this doesn't move the needle as much for the stock? I guess it's always possible. I still think watching the stock lately, how volatile it is, how often you have big moves in a day, like 5+% moves. It certainly doesn't seem like the stock movement is muted at all. And while, 750 million to 800 and something million is much less when you're talking company market caps, over $20 billion or whatever it is now, versus when it was like, $4 billion. I still think we could see a decent sized move, but I want to point out all the risks in this trade for you guys because I'm just worried that people just YOLO their money. And when I do this stuff, I'm always very careful. So how do we know the timeline? Well, if you go to the SDA's website and check out their solicitation that they put out for all the companies telling them, please come bid for these awards. They put right in the table here an estimated timeline for when these awards will be announced and awarded. You can see that the announcement of the awards is October 1st, according to this, and the actual awards says October 15th. For some reason, I thought it was flipped and the announcement would come after the awards. That's a little odd, but anyway, the key dates here are October 1st, which is obviously already passed, and October 15th, which is still in the future, and a date I've been looking towards for quite a while. Continuing on with the timeline, how do we know that this might be roughly accurate? Well, when I checked out the previous tranche awards for the transport layer, they said in the highlight here, their objective was to announce the selection around January 12th, 2024. If you go back and look at when the announcements were made, it was January 16th. So that's 4 days off. However, 2 of those days were a weekend, so really they're only a couple business days off when they said they were planning to award it. So that's a decent track record of them delivering awards on time. Obviously, there's always a risk that this time around they get delayed, but seeing these numbers did give me a good bit of confidence. Now, the big wrench in the plan, unfortunately, which is very frustrating, and that is the government shutdown. This is a screenshot from the SDA's website saying that due to the government shutdown, this platform is not being updated. So when it comes to national security projects, a lot of the times when it's in defense, these things do go forward during a shutdown if it's, essential to national security. I don't know for sure whether this would get awarded during a government shutdown or not. It very well might not. So we might be waiting for the government to get their act together, pass a funding bill, whatever, until the awards happen, which is obviously a huge frustration. And we don't know when that will be, and your guess is as good as mine on that. So that's the wrench in the plan that's extremely frustrating. And a reason that I did push out the expiry date on the call options I was looking at further, I was originally looking at some October 31st call options, and I ended up moving those out to November, December, and even later call options just to play it safer in terms of the expiry date. So as I talked about a little bit previously, what are our risk factors here? Because there's major risks on every trade. And when you're talking short-term options trades, those risks are massive. And when you're talking a small timeline and not as holding stock, things can go sideways fast. So obviously government shutdown, a big risk. There could be a big macro event, has absolutely nothing at all to do with Rocket Lab, but moves the entire market down, moves Rocket Lab down with the market and just drags you down, and there goes your trade, even though it has nothing to do with Rocket Lab at all. It could be a Rocket Lab event. Maybe they announce another big capital raise, adding more money to the balance sheet, diluting shareholders. Maybe they announce that Neutron's not going to launch this year and there's a massive crash in the stock, or maybe something else happens. You never know. Peter Beck sells some more shares. Could be anything. Always a risk, those black swan events you can't expect or predict. There's also the risk that Rocket Lab doesn't win, one of these 3 contracts. There's definitely more than 3 companies in the mix bidding for them. So you always have to admit that maybe they don't win, maybe other companies do win. And finally, this has happened to me before, where everything plays out exactly like I expect in a trade, but the stock doesn't move like I expect. So maybe Rocket Lab wins, but the stock doesn't have a very big move, only a few percent, and the kind of overall reaction of the markets is a big meh. Like, you never know. I've made a trade before. I forget exactly what it was, but I was right on for what was going to happen, but I was not right on for the reaction of the stock market. So that's something else you have to worry about. But all that being said, all those risk factors being said, let's talk about what I've done so far. So I did buy a bunch of call options. If you're not too familiar with call options, basically, instead of just owning stock in perpetuity, you're kind of predicting the stock price will be at least X by X date. And if it's not that much by that date, instead of still owning your stock, you have $0. But if it is that much or more, you get big upsized moves. So it's kind of like a high risk, high reward way of playing this event, as opposed to just buying the stock, which is, again, I still do have all my core stock positions, and I'm certainly not going to liquidate that and go all in on YOLO options or anything like that. But what I did do is I bought December 19th expiry calls, November 7th, April 17th, 2026, November 21st, and November 21st as well. And then different prices for like how much the stock would have to be for me to be making money, whether, $50 plus our premium, $49, even up to $60, $47, and $46. So various strike prices, various dates spread out a little bit. But what has really caught me off guard is that although the announcement hasn't happened yet, the stock's already had a massive move since I started making these buys, and it's just been within the past couple weeks. So I've probably been buying, within the 24th to the 2nd, in this range right here, right? Like in the 50s, low 50s, and in the 40s, which is probably a phrase I never would have imagined myself saying just a few years ago on Rocket Lab when it was in the 4s. But anyway, I'm already up pretty substantially. So I invested $14,000 US across these call options, and they're valued at $26.4 thousand. That means my gains are $12,000 in a time frame of just about 2 weeks. That's already a double, almost. Not quite a double, but almost. So obviously, pretty happy with those returns. The other thing is, though, like I was planning to keep buying up until October 15th, and expecting the awards to get pushed beyond that. I was planning to keep buying more. So strangely, a little disappointed the stock has already run up so much, because I wanted to play this a little bit bigger. But I mean, obviously I can't complain about making $12,000 in 2 weeks. So yeah, that puts me in a little bit of an odd situation. But let's keep going here. I did just want to mention one other thing, which is this was an interesting tweet I saw. Prior to this, I was not actually familiar with dark pools. So a dark pool is a private exchange for trading stocks or securities, and these private exchanges are not accessible to the public. They're known as dark pools because they have a lack of transparency, and they are primarily to facilitate block trading by institutional investors who don't wish to impact the markets and wish their orders to remain, more obscured and stuff like that. Sometimes people are not happy with dark pools because they kind of allow trades without affecting the wider market, and there's lack of transparency and potential conflicts of interest. But anyway, there was a big dark pool buy on October 1st, which, as you recall, if we go back, was one of the notable dates here. So whether that has anything to do with it, whether someone knows something or not, like look at this. So regular dark pool volume apparently is something like $15 million for these days, $5 million. Then on October 1st, it jumps to $255 million plus. Like, what's going on there? Does someone know something? Is someone else also playing this? I don't know, but I thought that was interesting. And obviously the stock price has moved up substantially. Do people know something? Is this just macro markets driving the stock up further? I don't know. So what now, of course, becomes the question. My original plan was to keep buying some more options up to maybe the 15th. Maybe we have to wait several weeks for a government shutdown to end before an award gets announced. Do I just take my gains, almost a double, and call it a day, even though the entire thesis was around an award announcement that hasn't happened yet? That seems a little weird to do. So right now I'm just kind of holding. I don't know if I'll buy more given the run-up we've already had, but I also don't want to sell before a potential announcement happens. So I'm kind of just sitting here twiddling my thumbs, not too sure what to do right now, if I'm being honest. So I know that isn't like a exciting YouTuber thing to say. I should say, I know exactly what's going to happen. I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do it. And I'm a genius, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, you know, everyone's always a little uncertain when it comes to investing. There's no guarantees, especially magnified with short-term trades. It's always risky. It's always difficult and challenging. So yeah, I'm trying to figure it out along with everyone else. Happy with my returns so far. Thinking right now I'm going to continue to hold. Maybe if we have a big drop and the awards still haven't been announced, I might nibble on some more options. We'll have to wait and see in that. But end of the day, I'm just happy that I've made what is it, $12,000 in 2 weeks. How do you complain about that? You really can't. So very happy about that one. And just wanted to share with you guys the entire research that goes into one of these trades. It's very much not a YOLO. Oh, I think that might go up, so I'll just dump into call options. Really kind of try to dig deep around some of these contracts. And I think that is the advantage that comes with following a small industry, a small number of companies, or even one company incredibly closely, is that you're more able to identify potential catalysts like this. Whereas if you're following a very wide industry or a ton of companies at a more shallow level, you don't really see these opportunities. Also, once again, remember, this is like the 1% versus my 99% main portfolio, just holding stocks. So never forget that as well. So there's all the information for you guys, what I've been doing. This is my first significant Rocket Lab buys since probably it was back in the $4, $5 range. So pretty exciting time, and really interested to see where the stock goes from here. Hopefully I haven't sent off people to now just YOLO all their money into short-term options. I think I made it pretty clear that I think that's a bad idea and is in general irresponsible. These 1% type little trades I just find fun and exciting though, and I think is okay. Let me know what you think about this trade, any suggestions, ideas you might have, what you've been doing lately in the markets, how you feel about Rocket Lab stock. Is it now too high? Is it run up too fast? Always interested to hear your thoughts as well. And please do subscribe if you haven't already. Every new subscriber is very much appreciated. Those likes and comments always help out with the algorithm as well. I'll check out your comments and reply down below. Hope you guys have a great day and a great rest of the week. I will see you soon for the next video. Bye for now.